Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. It is the most perfect March afternoon here in Portland, Oregon. We are doing all kinds of yard work today. Early this morning, I gave Athena, one of my dogs, a haircut, which was a long and unpleasant process for both of us. And then now we are working on everything that there is to do in the garden, because how else could you possibly spend this day except out in the sunshine? And I wanted to talk about several things, so I may break this into 2 or 3 videos because I have so much that I want to share. So first of all, I'm going to talk about my beehives behind me. And then I think in the next video, I want to talk about shifting our poultry. We have a 3 paddock rotational system, and this is the weekend that we shift them out of one paddock and into another. So I'll be talking about that in the next video. And then I also want to talk about what you should and should not be doing in late March, especially in my zone 8B in Portland, Oregon. But any of you that are in a similar climate zone might be feeling temptations and might need to know the limits of what you can and can't do in your garden this time of year. So I hope you will tune in for all 3 of those. I think 3 sounds about right, 3 videos. And let's talk first about my bees. So I have 2 top bar beehives, and I got a request from a viewer to talk a little bit more about them. And this is the perfect opportunity to do so, because this week I discovered that both of my colonies have survived the winter. And in Portland, the overwinter survival rate is 45 to 55%. Now, when it is below 50 degrees and it's overcast or it's rainy, our bees are not going to be flying. They're going to be hunkering down and, trying to keep the colony warm, trying to conserve resources. But when the sun comes out and it's warm enough that they physically can fly, they are going to be out doing what's called cleansing flights. And they are also going to be foraging for anything that's blooming: crocus, rosemary, anything that's in bloom right now that they can forage from, they're going to go for it. Even though it may feel like late winter where you are, the bees know spring is approaching. So I was out working a couple of days ago, and it was sunny and it got above 55. And I noticed that both my cathedral hive here and my Kenyan top bar hive here had active workers coming and going, lots of them. And that was the signal to me that they had survived the winter. Now, lots of folks feed their bees over the winter, they treat them, they check on them. I practice the stun method, sheer total utter neglect. I am a facilitator for my bees. I provide homes for them, but I don't farm them. They are wild creatures that are choosing to reside. And in exchange for giving them a safe home and access to tons of forage, I take a little bit of honey and wax now and then. So I don't treat them. I don't want to prop up weak genetics. And that means I'm not going to feed my bees. I'm not going to make sure that I support weak genetics and ensure that a colony that otherwise would probably die will make it through the winter. I want to let nature take her course, and that can feel like really harsh. And it also means that you might think that I have a lot worse overwinter survival rate than other people, but my rate is about the same. Typically, I have 1 colony that makes it through the winter, and some years, like this year, I have both that do. Now, this colony here is a swarm that this colony threw off. So to me, that says both of these have strong overwinter survival genetics. They are a little tiny bit spicier than previous colonies, and my experience has been that the spicier the colony, perhaps the more hardy they are here in our winters. So now that my bees are flying, I know they're doing well. I am trying really intentionally to make sure that I have forage available to them all year long. So I'm thinking about what I'm planting in the garden and knowing that my bees will also forage up to a few miles away from here. So let's speak to the questions that someone had asked of me recently in the comment section. Why do you use top bar hives? Now, I started beekeeping when my kids were littler. I started beekeeping because I was terrified of bees, and yet I knew that they were important, and my garden was full of them. And I thought the best way to overcome my fear of bees is to interact with them, interact with tens of thousands of them on a regular basis. And so I started keeping bees, and my heart would be racing and I would be absolutely fear-stricken for several times I interacted with them. And over the years, that has lessened to the point where I have a healthy respect. I don't enjoy being stung 10 or 11 times, but I'm not scared of bees. I'm not scared of them in the garden. I'm glad to see them. I chose top bar hives because my kids were younger, and actually this one was gifted to me. They both were gifted to me actually, but this one was gifted to me with the idea that top bars are easier for children to work with than Langstroth hives. One bar with honey on it weighs 7 pounds, and that is something a child can work with versus a 60-pound super. So for me, I feel also that top bar hives are more ecological. They are much more the way that a bee colony would naturally want to build. And so I feel that that contributes toward their sustainability. Sorry, there's noise. My husband is doing work in the background. It's okay. You're okay. Now, I've talked about this in the past, maybe when I was a little bit more shy about speaking about it, and I'm less shy about it now. Folks ask, like, why do you keep honeybees at all? They're an introduced species. They're not an invasive species, they're an introduced species, and they do have an impact on the environment. I make sure that I have habitat and forage for native bees, and I'm a huge proponent of native bee conservation. But you can support native bees and also support honeybees. I have never ever purchased bees. The only bees I have ever kept in my yard are swarms I have caught from around Portland. And that's really important to me, because when folks say, like, oh, beekeeping is very, like, it's de rigueur to, like, crap all over beekeepers and be very anti-honeybee. That's sort of a trend the last couple of years. But the reality is that bees are in the landscape. They are already here and they are introduced. It's not that we are bringing them in. And when you capture swarms, you are keeping those bees from taking up residence in the walls of structures. Hello, birdies. You are keeping them from taking up residence in places where they're a huge inconvenience and hindrance to humans, and you are reducing that stress between humans and honeybees. These are bees that are here, they reproduce naturally, they were free in my community, and I gave them a home. And for me, I feel like it's very, very trendy to want to be really negative about backyard beekeeping when the problem is industrial beekeeping, right? I don't see those same folks being hypercritical of backyard chicken keeping, even though chickens are an introduced species that has an impact on the environment. There is some really spicy songbird territorial behavior going on over here. You can tell it's spring. So for me, I love keeping my bees. I find it is good for my mental health. It's good for pollination in my garden. My daughter really enjoys it. It provides a sustainable source of sweetener for our family, unlike sugar, which is often really ecologically devastating to produce and often uses labor practices that are not particularly ethical. So there is a cost to everything, and I talk a lot on this channel about not letting perfect be the enemy of good. And so for me, that's why I choose to be a beekeeper. So thanks for watching today. I hope that that answered your questions about beekeeping and why I do top bar beekeeping. And I will be back next time to tell you all about rotating our poultry. I think this is one that folks have asked me about a lot. Could you show us what it looks like when you are having your birds be done in one paddock and moving them into another? So please tune back in next time and I will talk all about that. Thanks.